In a modest apartment on a quiet street, two lives once merged in what appeared to be a calm and devoted relationship. He was 34, a reserved soul who found joy in simple routines, an avid gamer, a good-natured son, and someone who had long envisioned settling down with the right person. She, also in her early 30s, seemed lively and sociable, occasionally enjoying a drink to wind down. For 3 years, they navigated life's small triumphs and tribulations side by side. Little did he know that a single drunken confession would unravel it all, forcing him to confront the grim possibility that the woman he loved might not have been the woman he thought she was. It was meant to be another uneventful evening. He was seated at his PC, headphones on, playing through a favorite RPG. She, in the background, sipped from a bottle of wine, occasionally blurting out random tidbits of conversation that he half listened to. Over the last year, she had begun drinking a bit more frequently. A single beer here, a couple of glasses of wine there. He didn't drink. Alcohol did nothing for him but create a bitter taste he never acquired. Consequently, nights where she drank often ended with her becoming overly talkative or emotional, and him politely feigning attention. He thought nothing of it at first, until she uttered words that stopped his game cold. In a tone that seemed simultaneously proud and nostalgic, she mumbled something about cheating on everyone she ever dated. The phrase hit him like a bucket of ice water down his spine. He immediately logged out of his game, turned off the PC, and faced her squarely. For a moment, she flashed an odd smile, almost as if she were bragging. When he asked her to clarify, she simply shrugged, elaborating that every past boyfriend, all 7 of them, had been cheated on by her, and she had gotten away with it every time. She recalled, somewhat smugly, how none of them ever found out. Had he not known her to be drunk, he might have thought she was spinning some kind of dark joke. But the look in her eyes, a hazy mix of self-satisfaction and regret, confirmed her sincerity. His mind whirled. She's been unfaithful 7 times, yet for 3 years she never once mentioned cheating on a single ex, let alone all of them. Stricken with alarm, he said nothing more that night. He told her he was going to bed, hoping to sleep it off and reapproach it in the morning. She mumbled a lazy apology for spilling the beans, but seemed too inebriated to really parse his reaction. He awakened the next day, half hoping it had been a feverish dream. But there she was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, wearing an almost bashful expression. She greeted him with a soft, "Good morning," but quickly sensed his tension. After an agonizing silence, he confronted her about her confession. She grew quiet, her eyes widening. Her voice quivered as she confirmed it. Yes, she had cheated on all 7 of her prior boyfriends. Tearful now, she insisted she was never proud of it, that she had done it for reasons she couldn't fully explain. Youthful recklessness, thrill, selfishness. But she had never told him because she was so afraid of losing him. Hearing these words felt like a hammer blow to his chest. The quiet confidence she had shown the night before, the bizarre sense of swagger, was now replaced by remorseful tears. But for him, that only deepened the confusion. Which version was real? The drunken woman bragging about never getting caught, or the tearful partner who claimed she wasn't proud of her past? He told her he needed space, and she let him go. For 2 days, he dodged her calls and messages, spending time alone to let the shock settle. He found himself replaying their entire relationship, remembering he had once considered proposing, picturing a wedding, a future. Now every memory felt tainted by the knowledge that she had a habit of betraying those who trusted her most. Could she be cheating on me too? He thought. What if I'm just the latest in a line of oblivious partners? When his phone buzzed with her name again and again, he eventually caved and invited her over for a serious talk. No more half-truths, he warned. He wanted to know everything, how it began, how she justified it, whether it was ongoing, everything. If there was any hope for them, honesty would be the only path. She hesitated, but agreed, arriving at his door an hour later, clutching a jacket and looking visibly nervous. She settled into a chair at his small dining table, and he noted how different she seemed from the typically upbeat, confident woman he'd known. Her eyes brimmed with anxiety. Then, haltingly, she revealed details that changed the context slightly. She admitted she'd cheated on all those ex-boyfriends 10 years ago, mostly during her college years when she was younger, wilder, and more impulsive. She explained how therapy and self-reflection helped her realize that infidelity had been an outlet for her insecurities and ego, an addiction to excitement. She insisted she hadn't cheated on anyone since her early 20s. But her revelations didn't stop there. She acknowledged that when she first started dating him, she'd been messaging other guys, occasionally flirting. She said she never physically crossed a line, but she had indeed entertained possible emotional affairs. Only when she realized she was genuinely in love with him did she block those other men, dedicating herself fully to their relationship. Or so she claimed. He fought back tears, his heart tearing itself in opposite directions. On one side, he still felt deeply in love with her, the woman he imagined building a life with, the woman who had shown him genuine kindness and friendship for 3 years. On the other, that love now warred with a profound sense of betrayal, not necessarily from her cheating on him directly, but from the knowledge that she had so effortlessly cheated on every man she dated. She was, by her own admission, a serial cheater. And while she said her last fling of infidelity was a decade ago, her admission of texting multiple guys at their relationship's start stoked his paranoia. He couldn't ignore the uncomfortable possibility that she might slip back into old habits whenever life or temptation got tough. She cried as she explained her entire history. He believed parts of her story, especially about being in a different mental place a decade ago. But it didn't erase the prickle of doubt. She had, after all, withheld this huge piece of her life from him for years. Finally, after a prolonged silence, he thanked her for her honesty, but told her he could not continue. It wasn't about punishing her for being flawed or having a complicated past. It was about preserving his own peace of mind. The notion of walking on eggshells, constantly wondering if she'd do it again, felt like a weight around his neck. He told her plainly that his respect for himself and for monogamy ran too deep to settle for a relationship haunted by such doubts. She sobbed, trying to protest that she had changed, that her therapy worked, that she had proven her loyalty by never cheating on him in 3 years. But the damage was done. He gently shook his head. "I love you," he said, voice catching, "but I can't pretend this doesn't change things." She tried hugging him, but he stepped back. He explained that this was final. He had accepted her as she was, not knowing the full truth, and felt blindsided to discover she'd hidden the one fact that threatened his deepest sense of security. If she had been open earlier, maybe he could have processed it differently. But hearing her drunken pride about never getting caught suggested a side of her personality he found impossible to reconcile with marriage. The breakup, he realized, hurt them both. She left in tears, grasping for any last-minute argument that might sway him. He turned off his phone once she was gone. There were no more calls, no more second chances. That night, he lay in bed, eyes heavy, wrestling with heartbreak and anger. He'd once told his mother he might propose. Now he just stared at the empty space where her pillow used to be, feeling both free and horribly alone. Over the next few days, he carried out the usual tasks. Feeding the cat, tidying the living room, but everything felt off. He'd glance at pictures of them smiling at a beach, or receipts from that time they traveled to a friend's wedding. Each memory was tainted by the knowledge that he'd never fully known this woman. She had a streak of deception ingrained so deeply that it took drunken bragging to unearth it. Some of his friends told him he'd done the right thing, urging him to find someone who matched his level of commitment. Others wondered if he'd acted too rashly, reminding him that she never admitted to cheating on him specifically. He couldn't quite articulate that it wasn't merely about her past. It was about the essential capacity for deceit and whether he could trust her. The sense of betrayal ran deeper than a simple, she cheated before, so she might cheat again. It was about her comfort with not disclosing it, her laughing arrogance while drunk, and the shock that in nearly 3 years of serious dating, she never once broached the subject. He considered therapy, partly to sort through the jumbled feelings. A part of him recognized that nobody is purely defined by their worst mistakes, especially youthful ones. Yet, the key difference was how she had handled it, burying it, until alcohol loosened her tongue. Could she truly have changed? Possibly. But even if so, a relationship built on partial truths had lost its footing. In the end, he settled on heartbreak over uncertainty. He might have forgiven her if he'd known from the start. He might have weighed her past differently had she approached him sober and remorseful, explaining it as a cautionary tale of who she once was. Instead, she boasted mid-drunken haze, only to backpedal tearfully the next morning. The dual nature of her confession, and the realization that at the start of their relationship, she was also playing with fire by texting multiple men, shattered the bedrock of trust. Time would tell whether his heartbreak dulled and allowed him to move on, or if her repeated attempts at reconciliation would entice him to give her a second chance. But in his mind, the matter was settled. "I'm 34, he told a friend. "I'm too old to spend my nights anxious over whether she's seeing someone else." For him, the clarity was strangely comforting. Better to endure the clean break now than a gnawing suspicion every day. In the quiet hush of his apartment, he placed photos of them in a box, along with mementos of their 3-year journey. He reminded himself to let the tears come, not to bury them. The next day, he switched off the last vestiges of their digital connections. No more shared streaming accounts, no more daily messages. She might one day find someone else who can handle the shadows of her past, or maybe she'd address them differently in the future. For him, it was enough to walk away with self-respect intact, to preserve a sense of calm that soared above any short-lived illusions of happily ever after. And so he began that painful process of rebuilding, a process that, ironically, he realized he could only do alone. The knowledge that he'd never have to question her fidelity, never have to check her phone or wonder if she was covertly texting another man, brought a certain relief even in the depths of sorrow. In the end, he let the heartbreak wash over him, certain it was a lesser pain than living with the perpetual doubt of what if. And as he stepped into a new day, he did so unshackled from a future that now felt like a lie, even if it cost him the love he once cherished.